Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sophie Brusgaard-Jewett, and I'm so happy that you've joined us today. Decarbonization has been at the heart of everything we've done at Morescope for the past 3 years. And personally, I have worked on this topic for almost a decade. And so I want to start off this webinar with a bit of a personal reflection. And for many of you, this will sound familiar. So I used to use Excel for decarbonization projects. And so even the carbon accounting part of that was really, really challenging and time consuming. It involved digging through manual software inputs, multiple spreadsheets, reports, emails, sometimes, chasing individual people for data that was, hiding in 5 different places. It was also a very manual task, copying numbers from one file to another, recording, reconciling different versions, trying to keep track of assumptions and formulas. And of course, it was very complex. I usually did this as a consultant, and you needed deep business expertise to do this type of work. You also needed to understand the policy landscape behind decarbonization, understand technology trends and how technology would develop, and so in the end, you would end up having done a pretty massive and time-consuming exercise, but the result would be very static. Often in a slide deck or a PDF report, it looks really good on the day it's presented, but it's already outdated because things change. Energy prices change, suppliers change, operations change, and of course, company targets change. And so this static report was supposed to be used for decision support. I mean, presented to management, presented to board of directors, used towards investors, even customers sometimes. And that's a really high bar to meet with tools and processes that, frankly, were not built for dynamic, data-driven decision making. So let's just pause and ask ourselves, what is the actual problem we're trying to solve with decarbonization? Because it's not just about a beautiful plan or a beautiful report or ticking, a compliance reporting box. The real problem we're actually trying to solve is how do we make consistently better decisions that lower emissions, that also fit our company context, and that hold up over time? And to do that, you need a couple things. You need, of course, clarity on where your biggest potential emission reductions are. You need confidence in the calculations of those emission reductions, especially in terms of the data, the assumptions behind those calculations, and the sources of the data that you're using. And you also need some level of agility. I mean, you need to be able to test scenarios, go back to calculations and test different assumptions, adjust hypotheses, update plans as things change. So that agility is really important. And finally, you need ownership. If you as a company, you're trying to transition away from fossil fuels, you have to be in ownership of the process and of the results of making that transition plan, because that is the key to actually succeeding with operationalizing that plan. And so, like I said, today, many teams are trying to do that with static models, manual calculations, and documents that are really difficult to update or interrogate. And all of this means that a lot of decarbonization work actually becomes more of like one-off projects rather than the ongoing decision support process that we really need to succeed. And so we actually want decarbonization to move from, we did this 60-page project and we have this report somewhere, to we are living, we have a living, breathing, transparent foundation for the decision that we need to make. We can see actions, we can see assumptions, we can see the reduction potential, we can even see the trade-offs of doing different things. That's the gap that we're closing today. Because transitioning away from fossil fuels is the biggest challenge and the biggest imperative of our time. And so it's time that the tools live up to that task. Okay, so over the next 25 minutes, you'll get a first look of Morescope Decarbonization, how it works, which pain points it solves in practice. Then we will hear from our lovely customers, Akershus Energi and Elis, how they've actually been pilots for this decarbonization product that we're launching today. And we want to hear from them how this fits into how they work on decarbonization. And so finally, we are going to do a Q&A at the end. So please leave your comments in the, your questions in the comments, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can. If we can't get to all of them, we'll follow up after the webinar. So now let's make this all concrete, and it's my pleasure to hand it over to my colleague Kåre, who will walk you through a demo of Morescope Decarbonization. So Kåre, take it away.
Thank you, Sophie. My name is Kåre Magnus Sandstorberg, and I'm very excited to finally show this to a larger audience. As Sophie said, we've been working on this for quite a long time by now, and the whole team has really been looking forward to this moment where we're making actionable decarbonization strategies accessible and available to as many companies as we can. We're making decarbonization self-served by you. You guys are an expert in your context, in your organization, and you are really the only ones that needs to own and act on your transition plan. You need to know and understand the ins and outs of your data, of your actions, and your opportunities. So this tool is built to be decision support for you, to let you quickly test your hypotheses, to create and iterate on future scenarios to really find the best path forward for your company. It's dynamic, so changes and improvements in underlying data or timelines has to be up to date. We're tracking that through this tool. So change timelines impacts the plan through its actions, and everything changes and everything needs to be dynamic. So by having everything in one workspace, we can keep track of all those dependencies and changes for you. This transition plan tool is built on top of our powerful carbon accounting, which gives us that dynamic space. And our carbon accounting job is to really have a specific format, resolution, and accuracy that provides actionable insights for a transition in your decarbonization. And because of this, we're able to actually suggest and quantify very specific actions and their resulting reductions and assemble them into emission pathways for you to validate and iterate on. Okay, so enough delay. I know the main reasons you're here today is to actually see some new product. So let's dig into it. This is the current transition plan that I have put together for our company. And as you can see, there's multiple perspectives that makes up this transition plan. We have the historic accounted emissions here in blue. We have the brown or yellow line here, which is the target pathway that I have set in this demo company here. We have the green projected or forecasted emission pathway, which is a result of the actions that I have added to this scenario and set as my transition plan. And we have the growth plan here in the blue dotted line, which is capturing the expected growth of your company over time, where you can set with a target year and then expect a kind of year-on-year annual increase. Now, this whole page is taking a scenario that I have set as my transition plan and summarizing it. We'll come back to this page, but this is the end state that you kind of want to get to. So we have the targets perspective, where you set scope 1, 2, 3 targets. They don't have to be SBTi aligned, but we are kind of making sure that you know if they are or not. And we have the scenario, which is really the meat of the transition plan. So in Morescope, the scenarios is where your actions are. So you're using scenarios to find and put together a set of actions that are taking you towards your emission targets. So this is really a scenario-based tool or workflow, which means that you as a company can easily draft different actions and assemble them together. And then to evaluate what scenario is best for you and your emission pathway. So we have the action roadmap here. So these are actions that I have put together for today. And we have the roadmap or like the timeline of the different actions. Of course, you can chain them together and have dependencies. Let's look at this one. So we want to replace Oslo maintenance vans with battery electric vans and install depot chargers. So you see that this action ends in August 26. Of course, you can change that, but that will lead to the one-off emissions here. So you see the increased spike here. Okay, zoom in a bit to look at it better. See this spike here, which is the one-off emissions of these procured battery electric vans. So down here you see all the actions in the given scenario. So you have the reduction and you have the one-off. So this you want to be positive. It's a reduction being positive, meaning decrease of ton CO2. And you have a one-off, which is added or more emissions. So you want this to be as low as possible. And this specific action is in the fuel switching and electrification lever. And it has a name. So let's look at how an actual action looks like. We have the description, and we have the reasoning and the key assumptions here, which is also called theory of impact. We have the resulting list of components or concrete activities that is needed to make this action a reality. And this is where it's very important to kind of go in and sense check and kind of talk to your colleagues or talk to the experts for this specific action to see, does this make sense? Is this what we want to do? Some of the in-between calculations and reasoning and assumptions is really happening here and in the main reasoning. And then, of course, we have the implementation time, so you can see and change your start time and end time of the action. And then we have the main thing, which is the reduction calculation. And it mainly comprises of two parts. We have the recurring emissions, kind of the operational emissions of the action. And then we have the one-off emissions, which, as I said, you kind of want to keep low, but it's basically the CAPM or the invested part of the making the action real. And it will have a positive or like a increase in emissions. Here you see the kind of the historic emissions. So we have accounted in our carbon accounting in scope 1 mobile combustion for maintenance vans running on fuel diesel. And of course, it also takes the fuel in scope 3, the distribution and production of the fuel. And in this specific action, it will set those to 0 because we're completely replacing these vans and their fuel consumption. So we will have 0 scope 1 emissions after this action is done. But we will have new added electricity consumption for running the vans. And down here you see the new one-off emissions, procuring or buying the battery electric vans and some kind of charging infrastructure. Let's look into how we got here. So at every point, we're really showing fully transparently what is the AI doing, how did we get to these points, and of course you can change and kind of sense check it. So we have kind of the in-between calculations, so how many vans and what's the emission factor that we found for this specific thing. So everything I've shown so far, everything in content-wise that you see in, is actually generated by our AI workflow. So how do we get here? I'm gonna create another action. So in this scenario, we have the full electrification scenario, if you will. Let's make a scenario where instead of fully electrifying the fleet, let's just change to, for example, HVO fuel for the same vans and see and compare those two scenarios. I'm going to go into a new scenario, and this is, if you haven't added any actions, this is what you'll see. So you'll see basically the forecasted business as usual emissions, going slightly up because we have a expected growth, and you can create actions to kind of take control of that pathway. I'm going to use the labels that we have in our carbon accounting to isolate some of the emissions I want to focus on. And I'm going to use the timeline to make sure that the action happens before our near-term target, which is in 2030. And then I'm going to create some actions. So the first thing we do when we're creating and kind of pointing our AI workflow at a context, we're using what is called decarbonization levers. In Morescope, I want you to think of them as kind of conceptual directions for actions to kind of help us kind of focus what type of action are you looking for. So whenever you're generating and looking for new actions, we are asking you, okay, what kind of decarbonization lever do you want to have? We know in this scenario that we're looking for HVO fuel. So we're looking for a lever that matches that type of action. We have the fuel switching, it might be this one. We have the alternate fuels and low carbon feedstock, and just checking the description. And here we have like certified renewable diesel. So that would cover the HVO and it's targeting mobile combustion. So let's choose that as lever. So now we're focusing to generate actions on this lever inside this timeline for those selected emissions that you used your labels for. And we suggest 3 actions, which of course you can iterate and you can provide added context to really guide our AI workflow. And we're not fully calculating the reduction yet. It will take some deeper calculations and some more thinking to really get to what we were looking at before at the very detailed level. First one seems very relevant in what we're looking for. We have the switch maintenance fleet to HVO for regional vans. Let's look at what emissions is it targeting. So it's actually targeting all the vans across Norway. We can, of course, like target only Oslo or Trondheim and Stavanger by using the labels. But let's create one action for all the regional vans. So now the action is completed calculating, and we can see how this scenario compares to full electrification. You can see the reduction here and the one-off emissions. It's a much lower one-off emissions than, of course, acquiring new electric vans. So as you can see, this is how we in Morescope can quickly assemble very contextual and specific actions in a scenario for you to assess and take forwards internally. So when you have found a set of actions you believe in, and those actions are forecasted to meet your emission pathway, the next task is to start implementing them. Now we're going to hear from 2 of our pilot customers. We will hear from Mathias Elvestad from Akershus Energi and from Marit Roche Nielsen from Elis Norway. They're both sustainability experts in their companies, and they both have played a major part in getting us here today and to help us develop this tool. Both companies have gotten really far in their decarbonization work. Akershus Energi is a group company of 5 very different deep engineering energy companies, which means their decarbonization plan and actions needs to be very specific and sophisticated for their engineers. Elis Norway are a B2B textile and workwear provider with a circular business model, where they remain in ownership of all their products through its life cycle. So let's hear it.
We have river-based hydropower production. We have district heating, and we have 1 wind farm as of now, but also some solar power. So we're a renewable energy production company.
Our main task or offering to the market is to deliver services as rental. So what it used to be is a laundry service, but now we rent workwear, mats, hygiene articles. Between 85 and 90% of our revenue is based on our circular model.
We're just 2 people in a Uh, Not
Big.
so large company. They're like we're 100 people. When we want to be best in class, and we're only 2 people. There's a lot that need to be done at the same time. Everything in one area or yeah, one solution instead of 19 different Excel sheets that you keep forgetting where you have. It's just the dream. And then we see that the collaboration we've had is starting to get towards that direction where we kind of can move away from Excel and PowerPoint or the Office package.
I've seen your Excel spreadsheets that you and your colleague has been developing, and they're
Chaotic.
chaotic, but also very advanced, and you have done a lot of calculations beforehand. And
A lot of the working with climate management is just the chicken or the egg is should we put some targets on early on? All right, do we have the data? And then back and forth. So having something that can speak between the decarb plan and also the emission.
it's more dynamic.
It's more dynamic. Yeah.
And you also need to know kind of like, okay, what is my actual footprint? You need to gather that in some sense and see, maybe also compare between the different sites to see where does it make sense for me to do um any initiatives or measures. So data is a foundation for knowing where you are and where you need to go, I think.
We need kind of the sandboxing functionality while also being a little rigid and also changing the assumptions, having those kind of things.
I mean, it's getting the actual numbers in our face to see where does it actually impact. But being a very sales-driven organization, as we are, we're also a competitive organization internally between the sites. So I think it can also trigger the different managers on site to see, okay, these are my numbers. This is where I'm expected to go, and what are my what can I do? Because all the sites are different. They've been built in different phases of time. They have had different kinds of energy efficiency measures, for example, but they also have different product mixes. So they don't look the same. So they need to do different things, but they will also sort of, I think they will, knowing the managers on site, I think they will get triggered by the information that the platform can give us. I think the top management in France see it quite clearly. That's why they added it as a part of their business strategy. Um, it's the beauty of the rental service is that you have an incentive to make things last, and you have an incentive to repair them, so that we see quite clearly that the way that we think and the way that we handle our products lowers our impact. So when it comes to sales and actual use of the product, our main competitor is the buy, use, and throw away. So we have competitors in Norway on the market who also does laundry services, but the huge amount of companies that today buy their stuff, use it, and then throw it away is really our competitor. And whenever we get a new customer joining our model, it's a pro benefit for the environment, and we can document that. So I guess that's also why I can and feel comfortable working close to sales, because it's not a greenwashing exercise; it's an actual benefit. I also think it will be nice to see for the financial team to see sort of like, okay, when we put money in here, what's our return on investment? How can we reduce our dependency on the CO2 tax? We buy a lot of gas today. Okay, that has a cost. How can we reduce that compared to electricity or other impact? What's it called? Alternatives. Yeah. So it's visualizing it and making it more available for the way that I want to communicate with our internal stakeholders. I think most is the cool thing.
Hi, thank you so much for watching again, and we're on to the Q&A session of this webinar. We've gotten some really good questions in, so I'm just going to start from the top and we'll see how many questions we can answer. Number one, where and how can we keep track of estimated CapEx related to the actions? Kåre, do you want to take this on?
Sure. So right now, as you saw in the demo, there's nothing about the cost of the actions and the cost of the scenario. But we know that having this cost picture of a transition plan is extremely important. So this is the first kind of topic that we're going to look at in January, and really build out like what is the cost on specific actions, and how to aggregate it up to a plan level. So you will get KPIs on the cost of implementing it versus not, and the cost of CO2, and kind of including also the cost into the forecasting aspect of a scenario.
Yes, so definitely first up on the roadmap is adding costs, because the cost benefit analysis of which actions you should take is obviously one of the main benefits of having this in a software like this.
Yeah.
Okay, second question. How much prep work / how customized must the GHG account be for this to be effective? Do you need mostly primary data? A bit of a nuanced question, I think there. We can, of course, technically forecast lots of changes also on kind of lower quality data, but of course that input into your transition plan will also be a bit lower quality. So of course, this does require you to spend extra time in your carbon inventory so that you make sure that the data quality there is good enough to bring into decarb in a meaningful way. So that definitely puts some more pressure in terms of adding more activity data in your carbon accounting. But that is also the way that the market is just going at this point. And we are also seeing big leaps in ability to automate that activity data. So yes, you need activity data, but that activity data will be easier and easier to get a hold of. Yes, Kåre.
And we're thinking of it now as like actionable data versus not so actionable data. And there's many ways you can make, for example, spend-based emission data actionable.
Yeah.
By adding context around that data and knowing about what kind of activities are they attached to. So there's a lot we can do and will do about also spend-based emissions.
Yeah, I think one of the really exciting things here, because we're using AI to kind of extract a lot of the context that we need to suggest these actions, is that it's not just about kind of spend data versus activity data anymore. It's also about what other context can you give on that data. So really, like naming emission sources in a way that lets the AI kind of pull more information from your carbon accounting is one of the major ways that carbon accounting is also changing because of this.
Exactly. We have a question here. For the future emissions, does the system use last year emissions and adjust for potential growth? So yes, that's how it is right now. And there's a lot of stuff in the forecasting kind of forecasting perspective, if you will, of how we can make that more sophisticated. So we can project, for example, expected emissions from different grids. And as I mentioned before, like the cost of CO2 is a big part of that forecasting as well, to kind of have that nuance going into the future.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something to that?
No, I think that was great. We're also running out of time almost. I have one last question here. How and when can we get access to this? So if you're an existing customer of Morescope, you can just get in touch with us, and we are happy to let you kind of play around with decarb and see how it impacts your own kind of carbon management work. If you are new to us, just get in touch with this little QR code here, and we will set up a demo for you and explain how we can help you get to decarbonization. So with that, we have concluded. If you've asked a question in the chat, we will follow up with you after the webinar. But for now, thank you so much for coming, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.